So again, hello and thank you for joining us this evening for our spring launch of the San Joaquin Review. This evening marks the long-awaited revival of the San Joaquin Review since its last publication in 2021. I mean, that's a long time. So we're glad it's back. And so after being dormant for the last 3 years, it's an honor to celebrate this tremendous achievement with you all here in person. Thank you all for being here today. And as we wait for more people for more people to trickle in, if there's any, I'm going to start us off. My name is Brandon Xiong, and I am an assistant editor of the San Joaquin Review. I will be your host tonight, alongside fellow editors Taylor Seals, Katie Quigley, Joey LeForge, Don Parker, and our editor-in-chief, Haley McNeely. And I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about the San Joaquin Review. It seeks to create a space to reaffirm, encourage, and professionalize the creative capacity in our writers. We promote the tremendous cultural and social diversity of Central California, welcoming local writers of all genres and identities, no matter your gender, race, age, sexuality, or level of authorship. Our mission is to encourage writers and readers to reflect on and share unique perspectives that examine the society in which they live. We encourage works that challenge readers to think outside the norm and expand the definition of conventional literature in creative and experimental ways. And at this time, we'd like to take a moment to offer a land acknowledgement. The Fresno State campus site sits in the midst of the San Joaquin Valley, a valley rich in the traditions and representation of Native American peoples and cultures. We are grateful to be in the traditional homelands of the Yokuts and Mono people, whose diverse tribal communities share stewardship over this land. And along with that acknowledgement, we would like to take this time to thank the following for making tonight's event possible: Fresno State's English Department and Creative Writing Program, Jefferson Beavers and Lisa Galvez in the English Department, and Professor Bryn Saito, our faculty advisor in the English Department. And just a few more announcements before we officially begin. We'll begin with some readings from a selection of authors in each genre. And there are some light snacks and water, so please help yourself during the reading. And let's get started with tonight's Journal Launch. Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you so much.
Hello everyone, my name is Taylor Seals. Thank you all so much for coming. I'm super duper excited to announce our first author of the afternoon, who is Daniel Celaya. Daniel Celaya is a Fresno State senior majoring in English literature. This is his second publication, the first being Ravenous Shadows in Reedley College's Kings River Review. Daniel has always had a penchant for writing, and it's become an important outlet for his creative voice. His focus is mainly on fiction, and he has plans to release full-length novels in the future, excuse me. So please join me in welcoming Daniel.
Thank you. The Sins of the Father by Daniel Celaya. Ezekiel took another tiny sip of the coffee he'd been nursing for the past 6 hours. It had long since grown cold, but the incremental sips were born out of necessity. It was too late to go to the store and buy another bag of coffee grounds, and he didn't have the desire to go sting his palate with 24-hour gas station coffee that smelled like burnt pencils and tasted just as bad. Setting aside the cup, he turned his attention to a tape recorder and a collection of cassette tapes with fading dates listed on them. He'd found them wasting away in the attic of his childhood home. After his mother's passing, he inherited the property and took to cleaning out the house. A yellowed note had been stapled to the box he found them in. Written in his mother's hand, it said only they were tapes recorded years ago by his father, Mercer. A part of Ezekiel wished to leave the tapes well enough alone, waiting for another blanket of dust to be thrown over them. He knew he couldn't. He needed to hear the voice of the man who abandoned them decades ago. His mother grew distant and reticent whenever Mercer's name was brought up. Perhaps these tapes would offer a glimpse of the man Ezekiel barely knew. He took the first tape, dated March 1994, and placed it in the recorder. With trembling hands, either from apprehension or the caffeine surging through his veins, he pressed the play button. Static crackled like lightning, sending a shiver up his spine, throwing the hair on his arms up in taut unison. The company is setting up shop. There isn't too much to report, but all the same, it was a good idea coming out here. The voice paused for a moment, inhaling sharply, then exhaling. We should be up and running next month. I'll probably have more to say come then. With that, the recording had ended. Hearing his father's voice was like a bucket of cold water thrown into his soul. He hadn't heard it in decades, and he'd forgotten how calm and collected it was. On to the next, he said in a hoarse whisper. April 1994. We finally got the building up and running. Took us years, but that's what it takes in this line of work. Everything has to be perfect. I've got some of the old boys down in the factory putting in their hours day and night. We are operating at full capacity, working our asses off to get everything processed, packed, and shipped out. The industry is booming, as it always is. We've got buyers all over placing orders. Money is flowing like milk and honey. Ezekiel frowned. A business endeavor? These recordings are nearly 30 years old. His father walked out in '82, so that meant this little adventure of his was 12 years after the fact. Ezekiel's excitement blunted somewhat, but his curiosity remained. He played the next tape. Cattle processing is slowing down a little. We've got so many the plant keep up. But we'll make sure they get to where they need to be going. Our pay is on the line. A meat packing plant, maybe? Ezekiel wondered, leaning back in his chair. He listened to a few more. In each one, his father's voice was calm, collected, and pragmatic. On and on, month after month, the same monotonous tone crackling through the recorder, talking about the cattle, their behaviors on arrival compared to departure, the money he and his workers were making over and over again, as though he was proud of it. Ezekiel absentmindedly reached for his coffee, knocking it over. He cursed, rallying from his drowsiness, but nothing spilled out of the cup. Empty. The word was a quiet sob through the fading thoughts in his mind. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes for a moment, surprisingly comfortable. His body was ravaged and tired after a day of cleaning. The rationed sips of coffee didn't have enough caffeine in them to keep him focused. He drifted quietly to sleep. Mercer sat silently in his office, smashing the butt of a cigarette into an overflowing ashtray. With only a single window, his office was identical to the rest of the plant. A large window sat at the very top of the factory's eastern wall, the side facing away from town. As a consequence, the plant received little natural light. The cattle lived and breathed under the fluorescent lights during the day and near darkness at night. Workers plied their grim trade with flashlights come sundown. Leaving the plant's lights on at night could attract attention, even if the factory was secluded in the woods. Occasionally, a wail from the cattle might rip through the air, striking feebly against the soundproof walls. He lit another cigarette, taking an enormous drag while he turned on the tape recorder. Been about a year now I've been at this. Cattle are still coming in, but the boys are starting to get on edge. This is the third time I've had someone tell me about seeing a shadow in the back end of the plant, near where the trucks pick up the cattle after we found them. He paused, looking up from his desk. The rancid odor of cartons upon cartons of cigarettes clouded the air with its stench, melding with the natural sweat that dripped down Mercer's back like a fetid brook. One of them even says he sees it out in the woods where we park our cars. No clue what to make of it. Most of these guys coming to me about this are blitzed out of their mind on hard drugs or have been fucked in the head since they were young. They're probably seeing things, working in the dark in conditions like this. His voice trailed off with a curse, grinding the cigarette in his fingers. Ezekiel awoke to birds chirping merrily outside his window. He groaned as he stood. The hardwood chair had ground his ass to paste. He rose to use the bathroom, washed up a bit, and made himself some food. The effort to not immediately fire up another tape was difficult, but he managed it all the same. After he had cleaned up and eaten, he finally allowed himself to return to his work. The recordings were monotonous until he came to January 1995. Mercer sounded worried, and he mentioned workers seeing some shadow in the dark. Moreover, his father was cursing, the first he'd heard of it in the recordings. Eager for more, he listened to the next several tapes, and his skin began to crawl in fear. They were short, terse, and hurried. His father's voice had lost its cool edge. He listened intently to this particular recording, dated May 1995. After it had ended, he sat rooted in fear, staring at the recorder. More sightings of that tall shadow, and something else is happening here. Any food the boys bring in spoils fast. Way too goddamn fast. I'm staring down an apple on my desk like it's the barrel of a 12 gauge, and I swear on my mother's life it looks like it's been festering inside the ass end of a dumpster for weeks. I brought it in this morning. Something's fucked here, and I bet it's connected to the mess we're making in this damn place. Ventilation ain't great, and the air is stale. He looked up from his desk, certain that he had seen something pass from underneath his door, as though someone walked right across it, but he saw no one in his window. Unnerved, he continued, but never took his eyes off the door. It'll hurt our profits, but we need to hold off on bringing in more cattle until we can clean up this place. If we can't feed the cattle, he whispered. The boys will have to go with dock pay for 2 weeks. Ezekiel stood up from his desk and moved about his house, trying to shake off his fear. He remained away from the tapes for the most part of the day, pondering whether to return to them at all. Yet as the sun began to sink over the horizon and darkness rose over his home with tenebrous wings, he found his morbid curiosity insatiable. He returned to them with a junkie's fervor and played the next tape. Mercer paced around inside his office. Blood, urine, feces, and a cocktail of other filth had been meticulously cleaned, but the food still rotted. Workers reported a painful pressure behind their eyes whenever they stood in the darkness. Their flashlights and the factory lights dimmed no matter how fresh their batteries. Everyone reported a feeling of being watched, and almost half of his boys had seen a tall figure in the shadows all over the plant and outside it too. More than once someone tried to shine a light on it, but nothing was there. Nevertheless, fresh rounds of cattle had been brought in to recuperate their financial losses. They couldn't slow down production anymore. The buyers would not have it. The cattle are on edge, he whispered, eyes darting around his office. We try to ship them off to buyers as quickly as possible, but they hear us talking. They know something's wrong. Some of them are starting to ask questions. He took a hit from his cigarette, missing his lips 3 times before he got it right. His lungs burned as though he were inhaling sulfur. Some of the boys are saying they're seeing this shadow in their homes or on the side of the road when they're driving home at night, seeing it in windows, mirrors, and reflections, hearing whispers just before they fall asleep and right before they wake up. Jason has told me he hears his own voice whispering in his house when the lights are off. Worst of all, some of the boys are getting sick. I don't need them spreading it to the cattle. If the buyers found out. 3 bangs fulminated on the doors to his office. He leapt back in his chair, nearly toppling over. The cigarette in his hand fell, and his heart pounded like an offbeat drum in his chest. Try as he might, he couldn't muster the courage to ask who was there. He waited, limbs frigid in terror, goosebumps crawling across his body like ants. No one crossed the window, and you had to reach the door. Mercer fingered the pistol on his waistband, the cold steel giving him a fraction of the comfort and courage it usually did. It felt too cold, too distant, too inhuman. He unlimbered the weapon and rose unsteadily to his feet, opening the door. Darkness yawned out before him like the screaming maw of Satan. Only the heavy footfalls of his workers dared intrude upon the silence's dominion. It seemed none of them heard the knocks on his door. Fear slithered down his back as a serpent would. He looked out the only window in the factory, seeing a row of dark trees that surrounded them. At the base of one tree, he saw an eerily tall figure, with what looked like eyes all over its face. It vanished as he blinked. I'll go ahead and end it there. Thank you very much.
All right, it is my pleasure to introduce Ellis Brewer. Ellis is in their final semester at Fresno State University, graduating with a Bachelor's of Arts in English Literature. They usually write in genres of literary review and analysis, but enjoy creative writing when they have the time. His favorite genres to write in are creative nonfiction and poetry, and he often enjoys working with themes of gender and sexuality as well as religious trauma. Please give a warm welcome to Ellis.
Okay, hi. I was trying to decide which parts to read for this because I don't want to, take up too much time. So if it doesn't make sense, I'm sorry. But my piece is called Eat Butterfly, and it's basically kind of a chronology of my experience with my gender. Yeah, I'll just start at the start and maybe skip around a little. The first section is called Egg/Chrysalis. They call it cracking the egg for a reason. Egg is a slang term for a person who's probably trans but doesn't know it yet. When I allow myself to remember those first painful realizations, I understand why they coined the term. I remember my life before I knew, but it felt like somebody else was living it. I took dinner with a degree of dissociation. My name sounded alien to me every time. I remember discovering there could be a different way of existing, and that others had done it before. The happiest moments were the realizations that I had never been alone and feeling that something was not quite right. But the egg is in a sheltered state of existence. It's a place where I don't have to think about why the word girl feels so wrong every time. If I can live with the discomfort of this claustrophobic, cramped space, I will not have to consider the dangers outside. The jagged edges of the egg's broken shell can be unforgiving. Sometimes on the way out, they scrape our faces, our hands, and our legs as we tear through to escape. But even this is a beautiful sort of pain because we know we're breaking through to a new life where little by little we can start to feel okay. It makes sense why they call it cracking the egg, but when I thought about it longer, I wondered if there might be a better term. The bravery of acknowledgement is monumental, and the decision to become comfortable is titanic. It is akin to the grueling work of a caterpillar when it knows it must change, making, inhabiting, then painstakingly undoing its own chrysalis. Chrysalis means new life. It is a transformation that begins when everything inside of you is dissolved down to the very goo of your being. From there you can find what you will become. Calling it cracking the egg implies you're hatching into a life just barely starting, implying you were never alive before. And sometimes it feels that way. Although even butterflies first hatch from an egg, the chrysalis is 1,000 times closer to the experience. It is a tireless and artful effort. Emerging is choosing to step into the form you knew you belonged in and inhabit the world in a new way. You existed before, but not like this, and somehow now you see everything from a different point of view. This next section is called Ginger Soup. Did you know? Inside a butterfly's chrysalis, they actually digest themselves. After releasing an acidic digestive fluid, the caterpillar melts itself down into a tissue cell soup. A week later, a butterfly will emerge. As I look in the bathroom mirror at my soft jaw and my unflat chest, I wish to do the same. I speak in my lowest voice, and still it is not enough for anyone to mistake me for anything but a woman. I hide my features, and still it is not enough to lower the amount of ma'ams said to me by customer service. If I could melt this body into a sinewy soup, they wouldn't know what to call me at all. Even so, all the things I have ever feared about telling the truth swirl in my mind like they're digestive acids. Maybe I am my own kind of chrysalis. I'm going to skip to the section titled Formation. Before I had the words to describe what was happening inside, I was already beginning to take shape. The walls I had so carefully constructed were starting to constrict me. When I was young, I behaved as much like a boy as was possible for me to do. I climbed and fell, and I rolled in mud, and I fought with sticks that were swords. But for all I did, it was never enough, because I could never be as all boy as people expect a boy to behave. I could yell and punch and have 1,000 dirt-clogged wars, but at some point in the day, all I wanted to do was play with Barbies. Some part of my nature always knew it did not want to be contained. Before I had even the forethought to break through the chrysalis walls, my sloshing inner understandings had begun forming into a new shape. Someday I would have the words to describe what was happening. And then I'm going to go second to last one. This is called Outside. I've learned the truth of my reality. It has been proven to me in so many ways. I know I'm not a woman. Every time I am reminded, I can feel the truth striking into the deepest parts of me, into the deepest parts of my being. But even so, it's easier to believe in the lies I used to tell myself. Yes, it is simpler to live in the fantasy, in the safety of the insulated world I created for myself out of necessity, where I could be surrounded by impenetrable walls enclosed by secrets. When I met the person in the reflection, it was the first large crack in the thin walls surrounding me, and when I tried to take a look, more of the wall crumbled. It became impossible to reseal my enclosure around me, and remaining sheltered by the falsities had become much too painful. Now I can't remember how to fit in with the people I used to talk to. Sometimes I can barely perceive their forms. I feel so far away, and I realize I'm far above looking down, unable to reach them. I hope somebody joins me soon. It is lonely here. Unclassifiable. Are you a girl or a boy? I'm barely conscious, blinking into a sun I haven't seen in days. My wings are still folded close to my body as I dangle from my branch, and still the questions fly. What am I? I want to laugh in their faces, even I'm not sure of that. The glare of so many examining eyes makes it difficult to move, though. They want to understand me, or more accurately, they want to know how they should treat me. But the joke's on them. I am neither, and both, and everything at once. Knowing they will always struggle to classify me, I feel almost powerful. Careful, testing the waters, I give a slow and tentative flap. Thank you.
The first poet I would like to welcome is Madylin Garcia. Madylin is a creative writing major in her junior year. She has always enjoyed writing, but hadn't considered committing to it beyond a hobby, especially not poetry, until a creative writing course she took during her senior year at Stargate High School in Colorado. Since then, Madylin has been reluctant to stop finding the poetic in the mundane, the memorable, and the miserable. And so she writes. Please welcome Madylin.
Hello, I will be reading 2 poems for you today. Iconopathy. Snare my hope, catch it innocent and whimpering, strung up by its throat, slice and roast its meat, sever and taxidermy its feet to sell on keychains at truck stops, to greasy hands, desperate to find a false prophet in a rabbit's fur. Commodify my compassion, break open my ribcage and harvest it straight from the source, rich, warm, and all too loving, bottled up in microdoses, just enough to connect, to feel, but not enough to care, not enough to change. Drown my outrage in car engine growls and neon, melting holes in the night sky. Covered up with ads for subscription-based sympathy, where all profit goes to financing fixtures and fictions to distract from dodging needles on pavement, cracking them beneath boots. My second one. For the dearest people in the dirtiest places, New Year's Day 2024. I found salvation in the view of the moon from under your kitchen table, the way it lit up the soft, sleeping face of the bleach blonde boy beside me and the puddle I hadn't noticed I was laying in, seeping through my t-shirt. You're in the other room, finding sanctuary in fake satin sheets, sleeping 6 to a mattress and finally letting yourself be held after all these years, by arms that carried you from the floor to a warm bath minutes after midnight. Your bathtub tap still drips, so the pipes don't freeze, and you count the sound like sheep, while I count quiet breaths from drunken bodies curling together for warmth, and I watch the moon pass out of view, paying no mind to our parish. That's all I have for you, just 2 short ones.
Thank you all so much for being here. Last but not least, we have Allyssa Lucero. Allyssa is a creative writing major in her senior year at Fresno State. She has been writing from a young age, and it has been a large part in her journey of healing and self-expression. Her writing incorporates many themes of violence, the physical body, relationships of all different kinds, and a bit of humor. Please join me in welcoming Allyssa.
Hello everyone, thank you so much for everyone who shared already. Everything was so beautiful. I have a few short poems for you today. Some of you may already be familiar with them. They're not new, but I'm happy to share them with you guys all today. The first one is An Apology to Peaches. I'm sorry for digging my fingers into you, pushing through your pink velvety outsides, pulling you apart, picking out your pretty prune core, all glittering like a jewel. I'm sorry for bruising you, gripping you much too tightly, my fingerprints blooming across your tender, fuzzy flesh, coloring you dull and pale. Forgive me as I lay prettier, younger fruits above you. They press into your softening, sinking skin, pushing you to the bottom of the bowl to rot. A pity how you have no eyes to cry from, and you have no mouth to scream.
I'm sorry, but you were delicious. And the next one the next one is titled A Girl is a Gun. You hold me like your daddy's shotgun, eagerly shaking about what's to come. Be a good man, be my good one. Make sure you've left the safety on. Don't need to be a marksman, just need the spurs that you came in. A girl ain't no different than a weapon. Just keep your hands where I can see them. You know, my mother was a shotgun too, semi-automatic with a short fuse. Get too handsy, and she'd shoot right through. A real dead ringer back in her youth. So if a shotgun is what you need, then there'd be no better one than me. 3rd generation, the first round's free. I do a good job, but I bring a lot of grief. Thank you. Just one more real quick one. This one is atop my mattress, the operating table. I approach you open-chested, expressing all of me to you. I kissed you once, but you came for more. Trapped in time, underneath wondrous light, our mouths hot, lips dotting incision lines, like striking matches across skin. The history of your body, everything that's touched it before me, your meat and bone, fat and flesh, a ruddy mash of pomegranate. Between your shoulders, where you were cut open, I bite thread between my teeth, closing every wound on you. Kisses upon kisses, I suture you shut. Thank you.
So that concludes our readings and journal launch. Let's give our authors one last round of applause for their amazing work.